one reason or another, the referral source didn't, I mean, the most common one I see is the med list. Or there's another, if they haven't had it signed by the physician, they have the orders are signed by a physician's assistant, and we have to call back and verbally confirm that a physician will be signing the orders. If we don't get that until Wednesday, that's when the referral is. So we got the referral ourselves. Our agency received, a referral and heads up that we were getting a patient on Monday, but we didn't get the medication list until Wednesday. We haven't technically, for the purposes of answering this question, gotten the referral until Wednesday. Same thing if it's they have a nurse practitioner signing for the orders. We still haven't received the order or the referral date until Wednesday, till we get that confirmation, that verbal order that a physician is going to be signing. That's when the referral date is. So we've kind of harped on that with intake to make sure that they're updating the admissions and status tab and the referral date listed there. But if you know that we didn't get a med list until, let's say, it'd be more pertinent if we weren't getting out there until Thursday. You couldn't get out there until Thursday because we didn't have a med list, and we need to have the med list to go out there. The referral date in all scripts or NetSmart may be Monday, but we didn't get the referral, we didn't get the med list until Wednesday. That's the date you use when you go to answer the question as the date of the referral. So it's important to understand that. We're trying to get better about having intake clarify that, but yourselves what the guidelines are, so apply them. So as far as patient caregiver drug education, this question M 2016, at the time of or since the most recent start care assessment, was the patient or caregiver instructed by the agency staff to monitor effectiveness of drug therapy, adverse reactions, significant side effects, and how and when to occur, when problems may occur? That question should just always be yes. We have to go through it says at the time of start of care. If I'm the PT, I'm probably not going to delve into their medications, or let's assume that they very clearly have a good understanding of their medications. I still have to do the medication reconciliation, and part of that is at least clarifying that they do understand that some of these are high risk or that there are some side effects, or if they, to report to their physician. I have to at the very least, if I'm a crappy clinician, I'm supposed to at least say, hey, these are, medications that may cause drowsiness. Do you know to call your physician if you notice that? I've at least gone bare bones minimum to do that, so I should be able to answer this question yes. The only way you answer this question is no, is if you just aren't doing our job. I mean, that's really, if we don't do the medication reconciliation the way it's supposed to be done, you would answer no, but, so there really should never be any reason to answer no for that question. And there's a I'm not going to go into any more of the description there. I mean, I think we're all kind of clear on that. Flu vaccine is a frustrating one. If we run into a patient who believes that the government is conspiring to get them with the vaccines, I mean, for whatever reason, we're never going to convince them to get a flu shot. Mm-hmm. We get a negative rating for that. So if they get the flu shot, we can mark it as yes. If they don't get the flu shot for whatever the cause, doesn't matter, we get negatively impacted, which we go, that's crappy, that shouldn't be. I mean, presumably all agencies are going to get their fair share of those people. You know what I mean? That's not really, don't get too hung up on that, and it's not like we can change it anyway. To me, the takeaway is if we hear that patient who we say, did you get your flu shot this year? And they go, oh no, I meant to do that. I need to do that next time I go see my physician. If you can, think to remember to mention that among all the other things we have to remember with the physician. Mention that on the initial call with the physician's office. I opened so-and-so today, by the way, next time they come in, they wanted to get a flu shot, so I just wanted to make sure you guys would bring it up with them. I mean, try to help facilitate that, educate patients on the importance of a flu shot. If they're just not ever going to get one, there's nothing we can do about that. But it is important to note that this is a pretty important question. So we should at least be putting some effort into it. And it really is the best way we have to fight flu for older people. So, I don't mean to imply the only reason it's important is because of these ratings. But so then those are the three that are yes or no. Those are the process measures. The other 6 questions that go into this star rating we've outlined them before, but I'm going to go into detail about how to rate all these. So frequency of pain interfering with patient's activity or movement. This has been a hot item for us recently. Get a sip of water. There's a couple things to me that are important to understand about this question. This question does not get tied to the a standardized assessment we use to assess their pain. So there's one question that says, did you assess their pain with a standard validated assessment tool? And it's a yes or no question. But this question of how it interferes with their activity or pain, it's almost separate from how they rated their pain. If they rated it at a 6 or a 2, that doesn't mean we should necessarily base our answer to this question off of that. We need to delve in a little bit more with people about how pain is affecting their activity. In other words, if they're at a 0 out of 10, great. Well, is the fear of pain preventing them from going up and down the stairs on a routine basis, or is it they're in 0 out of 10 pain now, but if they would go for a walk outside, they would be in excruciating pain. We take that that's what we're taking into consideration. So it's important, really, and the guidelines here say include all activities, even sleeping, recreation, watching television, not just ADLs, anything at all. If pain interferes with their activity, we need to take that into consideration based off of the frequency they would be doing that. So it's at least important to delve a little bit more. We've talked about kind of methods for doing a more thorough pain assessment. At the very least, for the purposes of answering this question, we have to probe a little more with our pain assessment to see what activity they're not doing. So the guidelines here do say, if you're reviewing a patient's medication, the presence of pain or joint disease provides an opportunity to explore that a little bit. Again, that patient who says I have 0 out of 10 pain, but is on some significant pain medications, ask them about that. Why do you take that pain medication? When would pain otherwise limit you? If you're not in pain right now, but what does it stop you? Why are you taking that medication? Is a good question to kind of get them to talk a little bit more about the activity it's interfering with. And also, as we talked about, or as we I think would know, I guess I should say, you can assess their nonverbal their observation. So again, somebody says pain doesn't bother them, they're not having any pain, and pain doesn't limit their activity at all, but you watch them grimace when they go to reach up for something overhead, you can pain is interfering with that activity. It's not, they groan when they go to stand up, which is what I do all the time. That's interfering with that activity for me. And it says, so pain that's well controlled with treatment may not interfere with activity or movement at all. So they may be, if they're saying I have 0 out of 10 pain, I'm on this pain medication, and I can just do, but for it to really be not interfering with activity or movement at all, somebody would have to say, well, I'm on my oxycodone, but and with that I can walk around and do anything I want at any time without the threat of pain, because my pain is that well controlled. Any questions on pain interfering with activity? And if there are any questions that come up later, please feel free to mention them. So the next one is shortness of breath. And this is interesting too, to note, if a patient uses oxygen intermittently, enter the response based off of their shortness of breath without the use of oxygen. Responses based on the patient's actual use of oxygen in the home, not on the physician's order. That's a little different than that one convention. We're sort of thinking, well, what is the physician ordered? The physician has told them to be on oxygen continuously, and maybe when they're on oxygen continuously, they're not short of breath, but they just somewhere along the lines had gotten the impression they could take it off and only use it, how often do you hear, well, I only use it when I need to. I don't know, who knows how they're assessing that, but we assess their ability based off of when they don't have it on. In that case, that person who's taken it off, that's how we rate them. And likewise, if they are using it continuously, we rate them on how they're using how they use their oxygen. But it's their actual use of oxygen, not just how the physician wants them to be using oxygen. So I don't know, we could read that. The next slide is just pulled directly from the manual. We could read it. So chair fast or bed-bound patient, evaluate the level of exertion required to produce shortness of breath. Chair fast patient can be assessed for level of dyspnea while performing ADLs or at rest. 0 would be they've not had short of breath during this day. I don't know that there's anything really, mind-blowing in there. So I'll just gloss over that one. And I kind of separated those two because they're not part of the ADL, IADL scoring guidelines. These scoring guidelines, if you were to read through the manual, these 4 things here are listed at the bottom of each one as being the common recommendations for how we assess the patient. And it's important to understand too, so observation and demonstration is the preferred method. Caregiver interview and patient interview is part of it, physical assessment is part of it, but the environmental assessment is a part of their ability. If somebody doesn't have a bathroom on their main floor and they have to traverse up and down the stairs to go to the bathroom, use the shower, we have to take their ability to use the stairs into account on their questions of toilet transferring, bathing, anything that involves them accessing the bathroom, anything that is. So let's go back to the grooming question. So a patient who knows to keep their fingernail clippers right next to the bed because they just know they're unsteady and that's how they use them, that person might be independent with clipping their fingernails. If somebody who would have the dexterity to clip their fingernails sitting there could do it, but they store their fingernail clippers down in like the back corner of some sink that requires them to kind of hunker down and reach back in there, and you're watching them do that and you're like, oh my god, you're gonna fall over, don't do that. That's what we consider. It's not their ability to assume they could levitate the clippers to them. We have to look at what's involved in the whole task. And that's where this patient must be viewed from a holistic perspective. We're really, that's a way we can intervene. Hey, you're really not that steady to reach down and get those, but 9 times out of 10, then you'll probably, yeah, well, you're right, I could just move them on top of the sink and store them there. Or any other number of, applications for that. If somebody just has things set up wrong and functionally has great balance, but they just don't have everything set up right, we need to take credit for just saying, hey, why don't you do it this way? That may be the only intervention we provide, and if we don't consider, their environment and holistically the task involved, we're not going to get credit for that intervention. We talked about, so physical impairments can be an impairment, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral impairments. Impaired judgment or fear can be included, and again, environmental barriers. That's exactly what I was just saying. Stairs, narrow doorways, location where items are stored. These are all things that need to get taken into account in rating all these questions. We already talked about the ability varying over time. Ambulation here is the patient's current ability to walk safely once in a standing position or use a wheelchair once in a seated position on a variety of surfaces. So the variety of surfaces refers to typical surfaces that the patient would routinely encounter in his or her environment and may vary based on the individual residence. Patient's ability to change or improve, that's kind of a common, so you got as medical restrictions are opposed or lifted. The one big takeaway from this question I think that a lot of people fall down on is, regardless of the need for an assistive device, if the patient needs human assistance, which again, as we said before, based off of the conventions, includes supervision or verbal cueing to safely ambulate, we'll enter response 2 or 3 automatically, depending on whether it's intermittent assistance or continuous. People get too hung up on the way the way the responses are listed. Is 0 is independent, 1 is with a cane, 2 is with a walker. 2 is not with a walker. 2 doesn't mean if they use a walker, they're a 2. 2 means if they use a two-handed device to walk safely on level surfaces and or they need human supervision to walk on unlevel surfaces or on the stairs, regardless of how they do with a walker. How do they do on the stairs? How do they do on unlevel surfaces? There are 2. So that's if they use a cane or they use nothing around the home, and you feel like they do pretty well. But if they would go outside and walk up and down their driveway, you'd feel like they needed human assistance. That person's a 2. So if a patient does not have a walking device, but is clearly not safe walking alone, enter response 3. So again, if you see somebody and you're going, and they either don't have a walker, or again, considering their cognitive ability and their safety awareness, their impaired judgment, they go, I have a walker I could use, but I don't want to. I prefer to, I do fine. I walk with my hands on the walls. That patient could use their walker and be safe, but they don't have the ability to do that on a daily assessment. So there are 3. They require human supervision or assistance at all times, regardless of the fact that they don't have a caregiver and they have a walker that they could use. They don't want to. They're not aware that they need to. So we rate them as a 3. I feel like so the takeaway for me here, a 0 or a 1 is somebody who's modified independent. If they have a cane, they know to use their cane, and they can walk around in the cane. They can walk around outside, up and down the 2 steps leading out of their home, and they can walk around without any problem with the cane. That's a 1. That person, it's a stretch to say they're homebound, probably. Why there'd have to be other reasons, but based off their functional ability, if they're a 1, that's somebody who doesn't have any issues getting out of the home, at least functionally walking. So most of our people are going to be a 2 or a 3, at least. Yeah, so and then in these assessment strategies here, in the specific guidelines on this question, it says if a patient uses furniture or walls for support, or demonstrates a loss of balance, or other actions that suggest a need for additional support for safe ambulation, observe their ability and safety on the stairs. If you're looking at them and you go, they're describing that they're pretty independent, they're walking around, they seem like they do okay, but I'm just not really comfortable that they are, you feel that they need human supervision. They need that either as on 2 or 3, depending on the amount of, depending on whether they can walk safely on a level surface or a unlevel surface. Transferring is another huge one, another one I know we're all getting wrong. I know for a fact we are all getting this one wrong, because I know for a fact thought I was getting it right, and I read the description and went, wow, I'm not even close. So for transferring, we're specifically talking about moving from the bed to a chair, or if they're bed fast, turning themselves in bed. So for most, I'll just read the description here. So for most patients, the transfer between bed and chair will include transferring from a supine position in bed to a sitting position at the bedside, then some type of stand pivot, or slide board transfer to a chair, and back into bed from the chair or sitting surface. If there's no chair in the patient's bedroom, here's one of the big eye openers about this question. If there's no chair in the patient's bedroom, or the patient does not routinely transfer from the bed directly into a chair in the bedroom, report the patient's ability to move from a supine position in bed to a sitting position at the side of the bed, then the ability to stand and sit on whatever surface is applicable to the patient's environment and need. For example, a chair in another room. So that's where everybody gets this warning in NetSmart that says if patients who require assistance with ambulation may need assistance with transferring, and we're all going, no, they don't. What are you talking about? If they don't have a chair routinely next to the bed, if they're not aware that they're, and I'll tell you, the only person who always has a chair next to their bed is like spinal cord patients or somebody with MS who knows that they need to have that chair there because that's how they transfer. Mm-hmm. Nobody else routinely stores a chair next to their bed to think like, well, I'm going to stand up and do a stand pivot transfer and sit in this chair. I mean, you don't do that. Mm-hmm. They're always going to be walking into, almost always, you know what I mean, going to be having to walk into the other room to complete the transfer based off of this description. I mean, it says that. For example, a chair in another room, a bedside commode, a toilet, a bench, etc., and include the ability to return back into the bed from the sitting surface. So we're rating people on their ability to get up out of bed, walk into the other room, and sit on